Tired of dying? Base tanking, all the damage not working for you? Welcome back to my PvM guide for beginners and Iron Men. Today we take on Helwyr, champion of Seren. Is he a wolf? Is he a man? Is he a bear? I don't know, but today we're going to learn how to kill him. Helwyr is a fun boss with great drops, but he's also a great learner boss for early to mid-level players looking to get into PvM. He follows this set routine of mechanics that, if you handle them badly, can really mess you up, but if you use the right abilities at the right time, you can almost completely neutralize him and make yourself feel like a PvM god in just a few steps. If you do find this guide helps to streamline your Helwyr kills, then don't forget to subscribe for future content. As usual, I'll cover recommended requirements for doing the boss, an example gear setup as well as inventory. I'll cover ability bars, all the boss's mechanics and how to handle them, as well as a full kill example. I will not cover the mechanics of God Wars 2 like reputation or getting kill count because I already did that in an earlier Vindicta video and there is nothing different for Helwyr. Requirements and recommendations. There's only one true requirement and that's level 80 magic. Without that you can't fight the boss, but in this guide I'll be mostly covering how to kill Helwyr with melee. So you'll also want level 80 in attack, strength and defense. You can use magic here, but some of the mechanics are a little harder. Range is also tougher because Helwyr mostly uses melee, so you're at the wrong end of the combat triangle. But it's also not impossible, just harder. You want level 70 prayer or higher with the pious prayers unlocked. If you have the tier 95 ancient curses unlocked, then use those instead. I would not consider doing this boss without super potions at a minimum, so you'll need access to those or better. Helwyr has a high defense, so you'll need all the hit chances you can get if you want efficient kills. Lastly, access to Water Retreat and the Water Retreat teleport spells won't affect the fight itself, but it makes getting to the boss so much easier, and will massively increase your effective kill rate by eliminating the time spent running between the boss and the bank. I'm going to recommend melee dual wield here for your setup. You'll need dual wield for shield switching, and I'd recommend melee over magic for two reasons. Firstly, it's easier and cheaper to obtain melee weapons, especially for Iron Men, with the advent of the mining and smithing update. Secondly, you want to use a halberd to deal with one of the mechanics, which means you want a melee setup. Other combat styles are feasible, but do make a specific combat mechanic harder. I would also want at least tier 75 weapons, as with lower weapons I think you'll really struggle with accuracy. I use tier 80 weapons in most of the clips of this guide, and I still often missed. For armor, take the highest tier power armor you have. Avoid tank armor because, let's be honest, it's a trap. For all other spots like amulets and rings, just take whatever your best DPS option is in that slot. I'm wearing a Ring of Life personally because I'm a hardcore and don't want to lose my character to a DC. In your inventory, you'll want a shield switch, unless you're bringing a defender, which I'll cover later. You'll also want a halberd switch if you're going for the melee route. For the halberd, I'd recommend Dragon at tier 60 or better. The reason you can have a lower tier halberd compared to your main hand is because you won't actually be using it to kill Helwyr, but instead, you'll be using it to AoE down some of the minions that he summons. You'll also want at least one prayer potion in case you run out of prayer. Additionally, you should bring a set of stat boosting potions. You don't need overloads, but if you don't have them, seriously consider investing in Herblore. They are an incredible addition to your PvM setup, and they are one of the most cost efficient ways of improving your kill times besides just getting good. Lastly, I'd bring your best DPS familiar. You can bring a Beast of Burden, but you really shouldn't need more than one inventory of food at Helwyr, and you can pretty easily bank at Water Retreat between kills. For the rest of your inventory, you can simply fill it up with food. I'm using sharks in these clips, but you could definitely go lower than that. You can kill Helwyr on Revolution or full manual. I've included a sample Revolution bar from the wiki and linked the full wiki in the comments for this video. Regardless of whether or not you use Revolution or full manual, you'll also want the following abilities on your hotbar: Hurricane, Quake, and Cleave, Devotion, Resonance, and either Debilitate or Reflect, Freedom, and lastly, Revenge. But you'll only want Revenge if you're using a defender instead of a shield switch. Before we move on, drop a note in the comment section if you think I've missed a trick anywhere in this guide. I am always looking to improve my own play, so if you have any method for handling Helwyr not covered here, then let me know. Now for the interesting bit, let's talk boss mechanics. Helwyr has 4 mechanics which he runs through in order, from the start of the fight until the end. He only has a single phase, so these mechanics never change. He will always rotate through Poison Mushrooms, You Will Bleed, Frenzy, and then Summon Wolves, before repeating. Additionally, he always uses 3 melee auto attacks in between each of these abilities, so you'll always want to be using Protect from melee. Let's do a deep dive on each ability. Helwyr will start with summoning clouds of poison from mushrooms dotted around the arena. He does this right at the start of the fight. poison does 250 typeless damage every tick until you move out of it. Also, it stops you running. Also, if you don't get out within 4 seconds, you're bound for 3 seconds, like in this clip. To avoid the damage, you can simply walk out of the gas like this, or use movement abilities like flash and bladed dive like this. The mushrooms are positioned randomly, so sometimes you can go a whole fight without them doing anything, and other times it's like they're a homing missile that appears under you every single rotation. Helwyr's second ability is his You Will Bleed attack. He rears up on his hind legs and you see the text, You Will Bleed. Then he stamps down and hits you for over 3000 melee damage. You can actually dodge this completely by moving out of the way, like in this clip, but in this guide we're going to let him hit us here, and instead use a shield switch plus resonance like in this clip. That way, instead of taking the damage, we'll heal for the damage. Remember that you can drop and drag a weapon to your ability bar. This lets you equip it like an ability, which can make shield switches much easier. If you are hit, Helwyr will also apply a stack of bleed that does 50 damage every 2 ticks. This happens even if you use resonance. At this point, we're just going to ignore the bleed and accept the damage as it's very low. Third, Helwyr will use his frenzy attack. He shouts, "You cannot escape me!" and leaps to your location like in this clip. He then hits with a rapid melee attack that deals up to 1800 damage every 2 ticks. And every hit also increases the damage of the bleed you have only by up to 50, up to a maximum of 250 damage. Again, you can completely dodge this frenzy attack through the correct use of movement abilities, but in this guide we'll focus on using defensives, as it's easier. You can use Devotion, which will reduce all the melee attacks to 1 damage like I do in this clip, or Debilitate, which will halve the damage like I use in this clip. Because of cooldowns, you'll have to alternate each rotation, so typically use Devotion on the first rotation, Debilitate on the second, Devotion on the third, and so on. At the end of the frenzy attack, you'll also want to use the Freedom ability like this. Freedom is normally used to break you free of binds, but in this case we're making use of the fact that it also removes any bleeds from your character. You have to make sure that you wait until after the frenzy attack ends before using Freedom. Otherwise the bleed will just get reapplied, and your Freedom will be on cooldown. Lastly, Helwyr howls towards the sky like in this clip, and summons 2 wolves to help you fight. The wolves have 3000 HP and do almost no damage. Unfortunately though, you do have to kill them. If you don't kill them, they'll make resonancing the next You Will Bleed attack very difficult, because you might accidentally waste resonance on one of their melee attacks instead of Helwyr's big one. Fortunately, they're very easy to kill. Switch to your halberd and use the threshold to whirlwind and then quake. If they're not dead yet, try hitting them with a basic cleave. The trick here is to make sure that the wolves are in range of you before you use your thresholds, as sometimes they seem to wait a second before moving towards you. After this, Helwyr resummons his poison mushroom clouds, which may or may not be anywhere near the same postcode as you, and the rotation continues as before. If you're a little nervous with the number of weapon switches shown in this video, then an alternate method is to bring a defender. For those of you who don't know, a defender is an offhand melee weapon that lets you use both dual wield and defensive abilities at the same time. The downside is that the defender counts as only half its tier, as both an offhand and a shield. So a tier 80 defender would only count as a tier 40 offhand when calculating damage, and a tier 40 shield when calculating defensive abilities. For this reason, using a defender is generally regarded as a little bit of a noob trap, but it does make the mechanics a little simpler when learning, which might help if you're struggling with this boss. As a bonus, it opens up the use of the Reflect defensive ability instead of Debilitate against the frenzy attack. Reflect is more reliable than Debilitate as it will never miss. Also, you can recover some of the DPS drop you lose by bringing a defender through the use of the Revenge ability. Revenge is a threshold defensive ability that increases your damage by 10% up to 100% every time you take damage, and it lasts for 20 seconds or until you unequip the defender. If you use Revenge directly after resonancing the You Will Bleed attack, then all those low damage bleeds that Helwyr does will actually boost your damage back to him. From my own testing, neither Reflect nor Revenge make up for the drop in stats using a defender brings, but it does reduce the number of clicks you have to make, so it is worth considering if you are having a difficult time executing those switches. Okay, so I start at War's Retreat at the Adrenaline Crystal. If you don't have access to that, then don't worry, it's not a huge deal. I'm going to use a few abilities here just to Adrenaline stall, and then I'm going to enter the arena. Now, at the start of the fight, I just make sure that my preds are up and my potion is all refreshed, and then I attack the boss. Now, yeah, instantly he uses the mushrooms, and unfortunately they are underneath me. It does give me a chance to walk my slaughter there, but also because I kited him away a little bit, it made him use You Will Bleed pretty quickly, which I had to resonance. And now he's going to use Frenzy in a second, and I'm going to have to use the Devotion, which I just did, And now you can see all these things are just hitting me for 1 damage. And at the end of the frenzy, I use Alt Q, which is my freedom ability, just to clear those bleeds. Now he's going to summon his wolves in a second, so I switch to my two-handed weapon. I wait for the wolves to get in nice and close, and then I use a hurricane and a smash to clear them out. And then I just got to wait for him to use his next You'll Bleed attack, which I'll use in, I think, 1 attack's time. So I switch out, use my resonance, block that, heal up a little bit. And next up, I just got to make sure I use my debilitate, which I did use, but it missed. That's the issue with debilitate, right? I don't have 100% accuracy, so I actually used the ability there to debilitate him and take half damage, but it missed, so I took full damage, and that means I've had to eat quite a few sharks in this clip here to make up for that. Nevertheless, I just keep DPSing. I ult Q the bleed like normal, and then I bring out my tuner weapon, do a whirlwind, and do a smash. He mushrooms underneath me, so I walk out the way. This does mean that there's a chance he uses his You'll Bleed a bit more quickly than before, because sometimes when you kite him, he jumps to the next mechanic. But this time I make sure I get my shield out and resonance to hit, and I'm basically back on track. I can use devotion for this frenzy attack, so it's going to hit me for 1s, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about that one missing. And now it's just a question of continuing to DPS whilst I wait for him to summon those wolves. Again, I wait for the wolves to get close, and then I do my spin and my smash. This time the mushrooms miss me, so I can ignore them. Let's focus on DPSing, and then he does his You'll Bleed. I resonance it, switch back to my offhand, and go back to DPSing. I'm going to try and hit him with a debilitate again. Hopefully this time it does hit. It does. So now you can see when he hits me, it's not doing quite so much damage, right? So I took a little more damage than I should have in this fight because my first ability missed. On the second rotation it was okay. I'm a little bit slow clearing this bleed out here. In fact, I think I'm just going for the kill, so I think I just leave the bleed on me because I'm being a bit greedy here and just trying to finish the kill as quickly as possible. It was the last kill for Reaper, so, you know. I wanted to end this video with a handful of tips and tricks for Helwyr that didn't fit neatly into the previous sections. If you're using the method outlined in this guide, then you'll need to carefully manage your adrenaline. Managing Helwyr's mechanics requires use of specific thresholds at specific times, like Devotion for the Frenzy attack or Quake and Hurricane for the Wolves. Whilst you can use Revolution, I'd recommend taking your thresholds off your Revo bar and activating them manually. Alternatively, Helwyr is a great boss to learn full manual at, as he really rewards precise play. Regardless of what you do, you will have to pay close attention to both your cooldowns and your adrenaline. Secondly, Helwyr has some brutal anti-kiting mechanics. If you're outside of melee range by even a couple of spaces, it can lead to him skipping auto attacks and moving straight onto his next mechanic. It can be a little frustrating, as sometimes you have to move to avoid the mushroom clouds, but that's just life. Thirdly, I didn't include it in my inventory setup as it's not essential in any way, but you can poison Helwyr, so bringing weapon poison or cinderbanes is a good option if you have them. I hope you found this guide helpful. Please drop a note in the comment section on any other bosses you'd like to see or general feedback on the guide. If it helped, or if you're just feeling in a generous mood, then please drop a like and subscribe for future content. Happy bossing.